Hey, Lord British. Sorry to bother you again. I was wondering, if you wouldn't mind. Hello, Dweeb. Let me guess. You need healing. Yeah. You know how snakes are. Always with the poison. Verily, and surely I have nothing better to do than cure your poison every 5 minutes. It's not like I'm a frickin' king and have a kingdom to run or anything. Well, look, I said sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to become the avatar of virtue here. For you, I might add. Curing my poison is the least you can do. I've had it with your insolence. You had best learn some humility. If thou return poisoned again, I shall knight thee Sir Snakebait and banish thee to the swamps. Do I still get XP for that? Yes. Nice. I tried to play Ultima IV Quest of the Avatar multiple times over the years, and the task always overwhelmed me. The mechanics are basic, but also different than anything that I was used to. The world is huge and it's so open-ended, and they give you so much freedom that I would just end up wandering around aimlessly, without a goal or purpose, which is what I do in real life. One of the reasons that I started the Dusty Game Society was to actually play these amazing games that I'd always bounced off of. To pick one game and stick with it for a whole month and give it the attention that it deserved. Like back in the day when you'd buy a game and that was your game. You'd sink endless rainy afternoons into it, whether it was easy, hard, fun, or a confusing mess that made you throw your Dunkaroos across the room. Ultima IV has always been on my list as one that I needed to experience properly. And this month I finally did, with the other Dusty Dweebs of the Dusty Game Society. I'll tell you more about the DGS at the end of the video, unless I forget, which is very possible because I have the memory of a particularly forgetful goldfish who sucks at Ultima IV. Quick note on versions, Ultima IV came out basically on everything. There are like 10 ports. The DOS version is free on GOG. You can go grab that right now if you want to dive right in. The computer versions of the game need an actual keyboard, and the controls are as complicated as you would expect from a PC game of this era. Kinda like trying to fly a plane with a TV remote. The NES version is easier to get into, but it plays more like Dragon Warrior than Ultima. I went with the Sega Master System version, which, according to the ancient lore masters of the internet, is the ultimate Ultima IV. Great graphics, solid music, and you can play it with a controller, or better yet, on a retro handheld. I love that this huge sprawling PC epic can now live happily inside a tiny plastic rectangle that lives in my pocket alongside whatever half-eaten snacks are in there. Right now it's Oreos, apparently. Ultima IV is big. Not just the map is big, although it is, but big to just grasp. Starting out feels like staring into the abyss, which is also an actual place in the game, so clearly I'm amazing at analogies. This game is as massive as the open world RPGs we play today. Just more primitive, but even still, it's impressive that it came out in 1985, and it still impresses today. The mechanics are clunky by modern standards, but once you learn the systems and do a bit of book learning, it really holds up. And by book learning, I mean literally book learning. The game shipped with 2 actual books and flat out tells you at the start, stop playing and read the books, nerd. There is the History of Britannia, as told by Kyle the Younger, which covers history, geography, towns, and even the monsters that you'll encounter. And the Book of Mystic Wisdom, as told by Philip the Wary, magician to the court of his most sovereign Lord British, which covers the herbs and crafting components and spells, with lovely descriptions and lore of each one. It's basically your fantasy homework. See, games back then couldn't fit all this info in the game. The discs and cartridges had tiny limits, so Richard Garriott, the legendary designer who made this series, his big idea was to make the game bigger than the game itself. He offloaded the lore into the books that you read before the game, so players carried this info in their heads with them as they played. Modern games handhold you and give you all the info you need exactly when you need it, like feeding pudding to a toddler. But here, it's your job to learn the lore first, so the game doesn't need to bog you down with that in the game. And it is totally worth it. Throw on some dungeon synthwave music, crack open the PDFs, and suddenly that spell component list makes sense. Nightshade isn't just a random word in your inventory list. It is a rare mushroom from the deepest forests, and you know why it's important. And when that little pixel triangle with lines shows up, you're like, oh god, that's a pack of reapers. I'm screwed. That's the magic of old RPGs. It's sort of like D&D, where half the game exists in your imagination. The graphics are simple and the combat is clunky, but once the lore clicks, everything makes sense and you'll feel like you're living through an epic fantasy story, rather than staring at icons on a screen. Getting started can be rough though. You watch a nice little cutscene, answer some moral dilemma questions that set your class and starting spot, and then the game just tosses you in. No quest marker, no tutorial, just good luck, loser. I really wanted the Dusty Game Society expedition to succeed, so I made a little quick start guide. It explains the first steps if you just want to dip your toes in, and some essential tips and tricks. For example, poison is brutal. Once you're poisoned, you're toast unless you know how to cure it. So I put together a simple website with that kind of essential info, plus the links to the books and maps. And I'll share it with you, of course. There's a link in the thingy below. This isn't your typical kill the dragon, save the princess RPG kind of story. Ultima IV wants you to live by virtues, to actually become a better person, which is weird because I usually play RPGs to rob peasants and hoard cabbages. It's a completely different setup from anything that I've played, and it's such an interesting idea that I'm surprised more games haven't copied this. The virtues are honesty, compassion, valor, justice, sacrifice, honor, spirituality, and humility. Some are easy, like sacrifice means just giving money to the poor and donating blood. Others are trickier. Justice means sparing non-evil beasts, letting creatures run away, or paying a little extra while shopping. Even conversations matter. What you say can raise or lower your virtues. If you go around being a cocky jerk, then you're not going to do well in the humility department or whatever. This is a main part of the game, discovering what the virtues are and experimenting with what you need to do to raise or lower them. I also touch on these in my guide, if you want the broad strokes. What really surprised me is that Ultima IV is a game about people. Sure, the world is crawling with beasts and evil floating eyeball monsters, but there are towns full of folks just trying to get by. You can talk to them, help them, and unlock new dialogue that nudge you towards progress. The people of the world are actually your main guides. They'll give you hints about the runes of virtue and point you to the shrines and even teach you the mantras that you need to chant. This is one of those games where you really do need to talk to everyone and actually listen. And take notes. This is definitely from the era of games where you were expected to write stuff down. I started with the intention of keeping a neat little adventure log, but after a few days it had devolved into a mess of random words and phrases like the ramblings of a madman. You'll also recruit companions as you prove yourself virtuous, one per level. The usual advice is to keep a small crew early on. I rolled with a party of 3. Me as a bard with some spells, Julia the tinker who could do ranged and melee combat, and Joffrey the fighter. He was on tank duty. Later, once you've got all the runes and shrines done, you can build a full party and start leveling them up. You'll need them too, because the endgame involves raiding dungeons for legendary items before you descend into the final boss lair, the Stygian Abyss. I'm not looking forward to that. Every city in Britannia has its own vibe, usually tied to a virtue. For example, U is the druid town up north, buried so deep in the woods that it's actually hard to find. The druids are obsessed with justice. They'll talk your ear off about it, and they even run a jail for unjust evildoers. You can even throw yourself in jail if you're feeling like a bad boy. The city of Britain, with Castle Britannia, are like the capital of the world. Lord British lives there, he's the king, ready to lore dump, level you up, and patch you up for free, which is good because I'm constantly getting beaten up and poor. Castle also has a seer who grades your virtue progress. You'll visit him often. It's like a medieval report card. The world is huge, and getting around is an adventure on its own. You can walk, or you can get a horse to ride faster, or you can do what I did and steal a pirate ship. And the moon gates are the fast travel system, and that's tied to 2 moons. That's what these little icons are up here. Trammel is the first moon, and that determines which gate opens when, and Feluca is the moon that determines where the gate leads to. Think of it like a fantasy subway system, only with more ankle-biting gremlins instead of ankle-biting rats. Combat in Ultima IV is turn-based, with melee, ranged, and spells depending on your class. Early on, the fights are simple, but once you've got a full party, especially in dungeons, it turns into a serious micromanagement situation. This is a very early CRPG, so if you've played games like Baldur's Gate 3, you can see the genre's roots here, minus the hot romances, unfortunately. Although, The basics of combat is, you'll always want to bring a spellcaster. Keep stocked up on reagents and mix up essential spells like Cure and Heal. Optionally, you can get some damage spells like Fireball. Gear up with the best armor and ranged weapons that you can afford, and then rampage across the land, smiting anything in your way. The enemies have their quirks. Some have poison, some put you to sleep, but overall it's pretty straightforward. Move, attack, cast spells, repeat. Each version of Ultima IV has its own look, from the Pip-Boy style graphics of the Apple II to the spiffy DOS remake, but I think the Sega Master System version is the one that holds up the best. The art is bright and colorful, and it makes exploring the world feel whimsical. The sprites are unique, and instead of the clunky first-person dungeons that they did on the PC, it uses a third-person view that makes the whole game feel more consistent. The sound isn't crazy special, but the tunes are super catchy. I played for hours and never once got sick of them. The little jingle that plays when you rest at night is gonna forever live rent-free in my brain. It's my happy place music. Honestly, I wish this played when I actually started drifting off to sleep in real life, to take me away to dreamland, where I play Ultima IV with my girlfriend Laura Croft in a bathtub full of root beer. There is so much more that I could say about this game, but I want to leave time to hear from the other DGS members, so I'll end with saying that this game was special to me because it was kind of one of those bucket list games that I knew I needed to experience. And playing this with the Dusty Game Society, hearing everyone's little tips and tricks and helping out people who got stuck, congratulating people who finished it, reading their reviews, I'm glad I waited to play this with the Dusty Game Society because this experience, I wouldn't trade this for anything. This has been my favorite Dusty Game Society game that I've played, both because I enjoyed the game itself so much, but also seeing it through the eyes of the other DGS members. To be honest, I didn't finish the game. I'm probably halfway through. I cleared the runes and the shrines, and then I dipped into my first dungeon and promptly got destroyed. I did end up cheating so that I could get some dungeon footage for this video, but I'm gonna go back to my real save now that I've made the video. I've accepted that this isn't a 1 month game for me. This one's gonna be a slow burn. I've taken the first steps on a much larger journey, and I love the idea that I have so much more ahead of me. Ultima IV is a tough nut to crack. I can attest it's easy to bounce off of, but I can't recommend enough that you at least give it a go. Whether you follow my quick start guide and just wander around and kill some monsters and see what it's about, or go all in with the books and the lore and play it properly, either way you'll probably see why it is so well loved, and maybe you'll come out a little more virtuous too. And if not, well, at least you'll still end up with a notebook full of scribbles that read like the ramblings of a time-traveling doomsday cult wizard. But that's just one dweeb's opinion, and the DGS isn't a one dweeb show, so let's hear what the other dusty dweebs had to say about Ultima IV. Shall we? Jefferson loved playing Ultima IV. Says it's not for the faint of heart, but 100% worth it, and the note papers you'll burn through while playing it. Martar didn't finish, but will keep playing. They prefer the Master System version and intends on becoming the avatar of good personness one day. This was Cyborg Reality's first month with the DGS. Thanks for joining, my friend. He played the Master System version and enjoyed the unique lore, although the note-taking nearly fried his brain after work. He didn't finish since Chrono Trigger snuck in to steal his attention, but got pretty far and might return on vacation. Final verdict, 7 out of 10 root beers. Another new DGS member, Crimson Cell, appreciated the trip back in time and appreciated the D&D feels, but ultimately felt the game was too dated and clunky. Gave it 5 out of 10 retro archaeologists. Stradvan Zarovich wrote an entire review, including an epilogue. Oh, it's so good. This what you see here is the short version. You can pause the video to read it if you want. Strahd played the Master System version and found in Ultima IV an ethical pilgrimage. They loved the virtue system, the tarot-based character creation, and how the lore and gameplay intertwine. From reagent-based magic to the quest for stones and artifacts in the Stygian abyss. While the clunky interface, grindy combat, and lack of a final villain were frustrations, even these felt thematically tied to sacrifice and patience. Their verdict? Flawed but remarkable, like playing a D&D campaign in 1985. A strong 8 out of 10. And congratulations on finishing the game too, although I should expect nothing less from the Lord of Darkness himself, I guess. Gradual Games came to Ultima IV after playing the Pico 8 demake Minima and loved how the simple graphics let imagination fill in the blanks like a TTRPG. They found the mix of mechanics fascinating, from virtues to dungeon crawling, and compared it to both JRPGs and wizardry. They didn't get too far this time, but plan to keep playing, praising it as a challenging but rewarding piece of gaming history. Jongjungbu played the Sega Master System version and said it felt like prepping for a tabletop RPG, with all the reading and research required. They joked about the NPCs constantly blocking paths and how multiple companions slow battles down, but still, they really enjoyed the old school CRPG vibe. Gave the NES version 7.5 out of 10, but the Sega Master System version got 8.5 out of 10. Norez R said that Ultima IV was more interesting than fun, like walking through a gaming museum. He enjoyed seeing how its open-ended design and morality system influenced later RPGs, but the minute-to-minute gameplay didn't click. Too much NPC keyword hunting, clunky battles, and no good middle ground between wandering aimlessly or using a guide. He's glad to have tried it for the history lesson, but won't be finishing. Firewalker tried Ultima IV for the first time and saw both its lasting influence and the quirks of modern games left behind. They love the deep character creation and the note-taking gameplay, even if parts felt tedious. Despite the frustrations, they are committed to finish it and even plan to move on to the sequels. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, and Firewalker also shared a shot of their notes too. I love seeing this sort of thing. The Shibushi praised Ultima IV's innovation, saying it cramps story, morality, and consequence into a 40-year-old game. They switched from the Sega Master System to the NES version for simpler menus, and loved how the virtue system lets you rob blind herb merchants early on and then make up for it later. Despite clunky controls, they called it nearly perfect where it counts: story, combat, and exploration. Moonside Man compared Ultima IV to reading Shakespeare, old-fashioned and a little bit funny, but undeniably deep and compelling. He didn't have time to finish, but enjoyed exploring, reading the guide, and dabbling, and called it an important piece of gaming history that still resonates today. And that's it. That's all we have for you today. A little look at a big game, Ultima IV: Quest of the Avatar. A tough nut to crack, a deep and rewarding adventure, a piece of gaming history, and the only RPG that guilt-tripped me harder than my mom does when I forget to buy her favorite olives when I go to get groceries. Whether you're just up for dipping your toes in to give it a try and see what it's about, or whether you're gonna go full-on lore master mode and learn everything and explore every nook and cranny, there's so much here to discover. But that's why we do this Dusty Game Society thing, to dig up these dusty relics and experience them again, or for the first time, together. The Dusty Game Society is a perk that I offered to the patrons of TechDweeb, a chance for me to play some games and nerd out with those cool dweebs who are kind enough to support the important work that I do. And honestly, I can't thank you enough for that. Thank you so much to all my supporters. If you're interested in throwing money at a stranger on the internet who makes videos that you like to watch while you poop, and also play some video games with the Dusty Game Society each month, there's a link in the thingy below. And now it's your turn. Give Ultima IV a shot and let us know what you think in the comments. Just whatever you do, don't ask Lord British for healing more than 5 times in a row. He will put you in the boat. Trust me, I know.